Right, so they fall like promises. Parachutes descending slowly over Gaza's shattered skyline, each bundle of aid framed as a symbol of hope. But those who rush to retrieve them risk death in doing so. Some are crushed beneath them, others are gunned down for approaching, still others drown in the sea chasing floating crates of flour and whatnot. Where aid drops have been sold to us all as a significant move to provide international relief, these drops are anything but humanitarian. They are spectacle, a theatre of mercy staged by the very governments funding Gaza's destruction. Airdrops that help no one and conceal everything, not least the deliberate, systematic starvation of 2 million people. They are not a response to famine, they're part of it. These aid drops are just the latest chapter in the starvation crisis of Gaza that is not just a humanitarian failure, it's a political strategy, a war crime in motion, and a genocidal policy executed through bureaucratic cruelty and military enforcement. Aid, grossly insufficient as this again is, has not been delivered to stop famine, but used to disguise it. Therefore, these parachutes are falling at the exact speed required for international impunity to keep pace with the ongoing Israeli atrocity. Right, so the current conditions of famine in Gaza are not the tragic but accidental consequences of war. They are the logical extension of a long-standing Israeli policy of siege, control and demographic punishment. Since 2007, Gaza has endured a land, air and sea blockade, reinforced by restrictions on imports, on fuel, on fishing zones, on construction materials, and even calorie intake. I'm not joking there either. Israel actually calculated the minimum caloric intake needed for Gazans to avoid malnutrition while deliberately restricting food imports just above that line. They did this back in 2012. After the Hamas-led attack on October the 7th of 2023, Israel shifted from siege to starvation warfare. Defence Minister at the time, Yoav Gallant, declared a complete siege, didn't he? Cutting off electricity, food, water, medicine. Israel told the world, we are fighting human animals and we act accordingly. These were not offhand remarks. They were expressions of intent, even back then. And intent is the legal bedrock of a genocide charge, after all. So the foundations of what we're seeing now were all laid out. The warning signs were there all that time ago. The siege was deepened through new coordination with Egypt, which sealed the Rafah border under pressure from Israel and Sisi's US backers. Cairo, dependent on American military aid and wary of destabilization, effectively became accomplice in isolating Gaza. So by the time we come to the here and now, famine conditions in Gaza have become undeniable. The World Food Programme noted that a third of the population had not eaten in several days. Save the Children warned that almost every single child in Gaza was now at risk of famine. Médecins Sans Frontières reported starvation deaths in makeshift hospitals and camps. Palestinian authorities have confirmed over 60,000 people are now dead from war and siege since October 7th, with 10% of the population missing and presumed dead under rubble or lost in bombed-out ruins. Yet the United Nations has not officially declared a famine. Why is that then, Damo? How can they have any excuse not to? Well, one significant reason for that is because Israel's prevented the data collection necessary for such a declaration to be made. Journalists, medics and aid workers on the ground have been killed in historical numbers, and outside of Gaza, journalists have, of course, been completely banned from going in, haven't they? Aircraft carrying journalists who were making these aid drops have been denied access, and this connects to these aid drops specifically now, because as the Middle East Monitor have reported, citing Israeli outlet Haaretz, Israel threatened to cancel all airdrops if media were on board filming Gaza. When famine cannot be documented, it cannot be named, and when it cannot be named, it cannot be prosecuted. That is the logic Israel are working with here. In response to international outrage, Western powers began conducting these aid airdrops over Gaza. The UK, France, Jordan, the US dropped food packages, claiming it was a life-saving operation, loving the optics of doing something that ostensibly we couldn't possibly disagree with. But analysis of these drops reveals their almost farcical inadequacy. According to Quds News and Press TV, many airdrops consisted of less than one truckload of food, barely enough to feed a single neighbourhood for a day. UNRWA director Philippe Lazzarini criticised the airdrop, saying they were optics, not substance, and he's absolutely right in that. Thousands of trucks carrying real amounts of aid remain stuck at Israel's border crossings, yet governments choose the performative option of parachutes and photo ops. Hamas condemned the airdrops as a political stunt designed to deflect attention from the continuing siege. Worse still, some of the aid drops have actually caused harm. On July the 27th, 11 Palestinians were injured when heavy crates fell onto tents in a displaced persons camp. On July 31st, a squawk box was covered. Israeli forces dropped aid into the sea and then fired at civilians trying to swim towards it. These are not isolated incidents. They demonstrate a policy that treats food not as a necessity but as a lure, a trap that enforces desperation and control, and provides entertainment for them even. Even more disturbingly, airdropped aid often falls in Israeli-controlled areas or zones where Israeli-backed militia groups operate. Israel does control some 80% of the Gaza Strip right now. Reports from Euromed have highlighted that food dropped in such areas is frequently confiscated or sold at black market rates. So for the average Gazan, even reaching aid has become a life-threatening act, even when it's literally dropped from the sky. The idea of these airdrops has become a grim parody of actual relief, serving more to shield Western governments from criticism and giving them some brownie points in the mainstream media than to do anything meaningful to alleviate actual suffering on the ground. While planes parachute token aid from the sky, trucks carrying real food remain idle outside Gaza's sealed borders. UNRWA has reported that thousands of trucks are queued at Rafah and Kerem Shalom, waiting days or weeks for Israeli approval that rarely comes. When trucks do enter, they are often rerouted or looted, waiting outside so they can become targets for settlers. The disparity between what is needed and what is allowed is staggering. Gaza requires around 500 aid trucks daily just to meet basic needs. That's according to the humanitarian agencies. Yet in most weeks for well over the last year, the number has hovered below 50. During declared humanitarian pauses, inverted commas, aid volumes rose briefly but never exceeded 20% of what was required. These are deliberately engineered mechanisms of starvation. Aid convoys coordinated by the US and Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF, have become notorious for discriminatory distribution. Aid was being weaponized by armed gangs linked to former Daesh fighters operating under GHF protection and IDF protection. Food is only distributed to compliant zones. But behind these cruder mechanisms lies a deeper political ideology. Openly genocidal figures like Itamar Ben-Gvir or Bezalel Smotrich have demanded a total siege on Gaza and opposed even symbolic humanitarian gestures. The refusal to allow food, the criminalization of aid agencies, and the blocking of medical evacuations are not aberrations. They are extensions of a state doctrine that sees Palestinians not as civilians with rights, but as an obstacle to be managed, removed, or erased. Aid is only permitted when it does not disrupt the ongoing plans of elimination. This is why the ban on independent verification by global journalists is such a massive ongoing issue, and Israel demanding they stay out, or the pittance of aid they are literally dropping on Palestinians' heads right now, will stop as well. Israel has tightly controlled information leaving Gaza. Foreign journalists are banned. They have been throughout this genocide. Palestinian journalists have been assassinated or detained or threatened. Human rights monitors have been denied access or expelled. Even satellites and drone footage have been suppressed. This policy ensures that evidence of famine, mass graves, targeted starvation, or aid-related deaths cannot be gathered. Without evidence, it becomes increasingly difficult for the international courts or UN agencies to act in an evidenced manner. Israel wants the starvation to become invisible and the genocide with it rather than empirical and proven fact. It's an attempt to blind the eyes of the world to the destruction of an entire people, and it can't be allowed to happen. In fact, the failure to stop it getting out via social media is what has destroyed Israel's reputation for good. It is a pariah state, genocidal in intent, and we all know it now, despite the best protestations and denials the Zionist lobby can muster. Between January and July of this year, at least 87 Palestinian journalists have been killed in the name of silencing Israel's crimes, many in targeted strikes on press-marked vehicles or homes. International correspondents have been banned from entering at every turn. The Committee to Protect Journalists and Reporters Without Borders have issued multiple emergency alerts, but Western media coverage remains limited to government-vetted briefings and anonymised satellite data. Moreover, UN agencies such as the World Food Programme or the OCHA have complained privately of Israeli interference in data collection. Health clinics are bombed, malnutrition surveys obstructed, and local staff intimidated. When no documentation can be collected, the declaration of famine becomes impossible despite widespread hunger. And the result is a grotesque situation in which Gaza is dying of hunger on the world's screens. We can all see it happening. But it cannot be formally declared a famine zone by the UN still. The July 31st video released by Squawkbox is emblematic of this cruelty. What kind of aid kills those who seek it? What kind of humanitarian operation demands that starving people dodge bullets to retrieve food? Only one designed not to help but to control, and to do that, the last thing Israel want are people reporting on it. It is not just starvation, it is starvation as a message. You are unwanted. You are unprotected. You will not be saved. We will make sure of it. Gaza is not starving because food is unavailable, it is starving because food is being withheld. The siege is not incidental to the war, it is a weapon of war. The airdrops are not a humanitarian intervention. They are a public relations cover for the maintenance of siege, and we know this whether foreign journalists get into Gaza or not. Until the blockade ends and full access is restored to aid organisations like UNRWA, until journalists can freely document conditions, and until international bodies are willing to use the word genocide, the parachutes will keep falling, but so will the bodies. What we are witnessing is not just starvation, it is a theatre of starvation, designed to make complicity look like compassion, and every crate that falls from the sky is another silent admission that the world sees what is happening, and chooses to do almost nothing, but still wants a pat on the back for it. Ordinary people are not standing for it, though, and as the last of the Handler crew are released from Israeli detention, having been kidnapped in international waters, just like the crew of the Madeleine before them, now a Freedom Armada may be about to launch. And actually, in no small part, this is not only on Netanyahu and Israel, but also Egypt's puppet leader Sisi too. Get all the details of that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the same time, which is very much appreciated, holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next feed. Cheers, folks.